bit by a tick. Still itches. Anyway, James Hammond. This guy is running for dual sheriff against Sheriff Scott DaCosta. One of the things that he has cited about why he would be a better sheriff than Scott DaCosta is that Scott DaCosta has gone through over 20 deputies in 5 years. You know, it's funny, I got treated like I was schizophrenic when I said it, but somehow when James Hammond says it, it makes a difference. Oh, cops are pulling somebody over. It's a good thing I'm not driving, huh? I would endorse James Hammond if he was willing to admit where he screwed up. If he was lied to by the sheriff, or threatened, harassed, or intimidated in some way that would give him an indication of why those other deputies left, up to and including my situation, which is likely the case. You think those people want to work for a crooked sheriff? Hell no. But they still want a good reference. The problem with James Hammond is that he did screwed up stuff. Now, he can admit that he did screwed up stuff. He can admit if he was told by the sheriff that I was schizophrenic, which is obviously not the case. Obviously, I am not schizophrenic. But if Scott DaCosta told him that I was schizophrenic and he made his decisions based on Scott DaCosta lying to him, well, I can understand why he did the screwed up stuff that he did. He was lied to. You want to trust your boss, right? No, you want to get a fucking paycheck. Now, I've looked into James Hammond, into his history. He's into a lot of the same stuff as me. Of course, he's got his experience from the outside, and I got my experience from the inside. I got my experience in California. I got my experience in Washington State. I got it in Wyoming. I got it in Nebraska. I got it in Colorado, and I got all of those places under my belt before I was 18. He's familiar with some of these places. Also, I invented not an injectable seat, but an entire ejectable cockpit. This is a guy who, on his resume, was speaking about designing and testing ejection seats. When I was in Virginia, one of the important things about the flip phone is that it had a lot of phone numbers in it for government agencies and different companies over on the East Coast. One of the things I was planning on doing, not just going to the Air and Space Museum with Ed Simmons, but also going to a lot of these places. I designed a helicopter rotor. It's based off two of my favorite designers. One of them is Nikola Tesla, and another one is Henri Coanda. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. But I was able to design a helicopter rotor that is the engine. And because of that, you can actually take out the transmission, you can take out the engine, it's all one assembly. By using a series of one-way valves that are non-moving, what you're able to do is, at the very edge of the rotor, at the very center of the rotor, you go around one revolution, you're not going very fast. But at the tips, they have to travel a further distance in a rotation. So the tips are going faster. You use basically a forced air induction at the leading edge of the rotor, and then on the trailing edge of the rotor, that's where you have an exhaust. Kind of similar to the Hiller Hornet or the Ferry Rotodyne, or there's several several renditions. The AH-64 Apache actually had a couple of test models that had something similar. I mean, they're not even close to being similar. What they had actually runs off of liquid hydrogen peroxide, and as soon as it's made contact with, basically it's a mesh unit of aluminum, it separates the hydrogen and the oxygen extremely rapidly, and it forces the hydrogen peroxide out the back end of the nozzle. Well, instead of doing that, what you're doing is you're basically taking the rotor and you're making it extra thick. Instead of having it have the normal trailing edge like it would, you give it a bean-shaped profile, or a bean-shaped cross-section profile. Instead of a standard leaf design is usually what they pick. What that allows you to do is, in a stall position, if your rotors actually stop moving, since I actually designed it to have two counter-rotating blades, two counter-rotating propellers, the real issue with that, they're all taken out of it just by the fact that you have two of them, but also due to the fact that you don't have a transmission that is attached to the airframe. You don't have to worry about counter-rotation of the airframe. Now, this is all stuff that James Hammond might actually understand, and most of you guys are going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about, you must be an idiot. He probably knows a little bit about thrust vectoring, too. He probably knows a little bit about slides as well. Yeah, and then most of them cockpits, they have a piece inside of the cockpit that basically it's got a slide in it, and similar to a dovetail groove, and that's what the ejection seat actually sits in. They want it to come out at a proper angle, not to break your fucking neck. Now, the reason that I designed an ejectable cockpit is because, well, using the magic of Kleenex tissues, I was able to figure out how to make it so that it's self-righting. One of the issues with ejecting the whole cockpit at high speeds, I designed it after watching a show where it talks about pilots who ejected at supersonic speeds, and it literally tore their limbs off. It'll kill you. And I don't like that idea. I know a guy named Owen Johnson, and he joined the Air Force and wanted to be a pilot. Well, I didn't want him to die. Any advantage that I could give him, whether I agree with the war he's fighting or not, any advantage I could give him for coming back alive, that's what I want to do. With the ejectable cockpit, basically you're making all of the controls so that, well, the cockpit itself, when it ejects, is itself a lifting body and an airframe. You're also making it so that that cockpit is, well, doing the same thing that it would do while it's attached to the airplane. It's still surrounding you. It's still preventing those elements from tearing your body apart. The other thing is, using the power of Kleenex, if you apply that to parachutes, little parachutes, then you'll self-right as you're coming away from the aircraft. Whereas at high speeds, the immediate turbulence that you encounter, it can literally splatter you like a bug inside of the thing. Like, let's imagine that you're going, 890 miles this way, right? And that's pretty slow speed, actually, for a lot of the jets we got now. You're going 890 miles per hour like this. You eject from your airframe. You get a little bit of air that gets in between the airframe and yourself, and you're getting into turbulence. It's going to wobble you and upright you immediately. So now, instead of going 890 miles per hour this way, you're now feet first, 890 miles per hour, everything in your body being forced to your head. You're going to have an aneurysm and you're going to die immediately. You do not want that. Having little parachutes that'll pull away at a predetermined weight, and having a series of them allows you to have the initial slowdown, which you're going to want, but not too much. Too much, again, will splatter you like a jar of ragu. I mean, you don't want that. Now, that's not to say that my concept will work. That's not to say that it is a possibility. And that ain't got a whole lot to do with Jim Hammond or James Hammond running for sheriff, does it? But also, he's not going to want to associate his name with me with all of the hatred towards me. Because, see, it's election year, right? You want to win the election. You don't want to speak up or fight for somebody who is unpopular. That'll lose you the election in Chapel, Nebraska. Also, admitting that he took part in those wrong things, whether he did it because of Sheriff DaCosta or not, is still a stain on his record, and he don't want that. That's embarrassing. It's embarrassing after his long and distinguished career that he did such petty and pitiful shit. It's a shame that such a intelligent man fell for the cruelty and stupidity of Sheriff Scott DaCosta. James Hammond is one of my predators. Whether he was duped into it or not is debatable. Whether or not he did so is not debatable because it is recorded. Have a nice day.